The chamber of the Galactic War Council was silent. 1,000 golden lights shimmered on the tall walls, and shadows of cloaked figures sat in a perfect circle. The air was heavy, almost sacred. Every voice in the Empire waited for one command, the order to begin the war against Earth. The Emperor sat on a high throne made of shining metal and ancient stone. His eyes glowed faintly under the golden crown. Around him stood 12 of the most powerful generals in the galaxy, leaders who had crushed worlds, burned moons, and erased civilizations. Yet tonight they looked uneasy. On the massive table before them floated a hologram of Earth, small, blue, and bright. To the Emperor, it was just another primitive world that had grown too fast. The humans had spread their colonies through the stars, breaking trade laws, building fleets, and ignoring the Council's rule. The Empire had tolerated it long enough. The Emperor's voice broke the silence. "Tonight," he said slowly, "we end the human problem. Their pride has crossed the line. Tomorrow our fleets will surround their worlds. We will teach them what it means to defy the Empire." The Council roared in agreement, all but one seat. An empty chair stood near the far end of the hall. The Emperor's gaze darkened. "Where is General Kareth?" he asked. No one answered at first. Then a side door opened. A tall figure stepped inside, armor scratched and blackened by battle, his face hidden under a hood of steel-gray fabric. General Kareth walked slowly toward his seat. Every eye followed him. He did not bow to the Emperor. Instead, he looked at the glowing image of Earth. "You are late," said the Emperor coldly. "I had to confirm something," Kareth replied, his voice calm, deep, and heavy. "Something about that planet." He sat down, folding his hands. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the Emperor leaned forward. "You've seen their worlds before. You've studied them. Tell us, General, what makes you so cautious of these humans?" Kareth raised his head. His voice was quiet, but it filled the room. "You think they are weak because their ships are smaller. You think they are young because their empire is new. But I have seen what they hide, not in the stars, but in their history." Some generals laughed. One of them said, "History? They are children compared to us. What can their past teach us?" Kareth turned his eyes to the hologram. The image of Earth began to change. Blue oceans fading to black smoke, shining cities turning into ruins. The room grew dim. Flames flickered across the hologram as he spoke. "They destroyed their own world more than once," he said. "Long before they reached space, they turned their planet into ash. They burned each other for power, faith, and fear. Entire nations vanished in a single day. They built weapons that could erase continents. And when everything was gone, they started again." The Council went silent. Kareth stood and walked slowly around the table. "They learned to survive their own madness. Every war made them stronger, smarter, colder. They are not afraid of death. They have lived beside it since the beginning." The Emperor frowned. "Enough," he said. "They are only one species. We are 1,000 worlds. They cannot stand against the Empire." Kareth stopped. "You do not understand. They are not fighting for conquest. They are fighting because they have always fought, even against themselves. They know how to lose everything and still rebuild. Tell me, Emperor, can your people do the same?" Murmurs filled the hall. Some generals looked down. Others whispered in fear. The Emperor clenched his fists. Kareth looked at him one last time. "I saw their ruins, their scars, their old battlegrounds. I read what they called world wars. They fought until the air turned to poison, and still they lived." He leaned forward and said softly, "If you go to war with them, you will not face soldiers. You will face survivors." The chamber fell into deep silence again. Even the golden light seemed dimmer now. The Emperor's voice finally came, sharp and angry. "You are afraid of myths, General. The Empire does not fear the ghosts of a small planet." Kareth bowed his head slightly. "You will," he said. Then he turned off the hologram and walked out of the hall, leaving the Council speechless. The Emperor stared at the dark reflection of Earth on the table, his hands shaking with quiet rage. Outside, across the Empire, fleets were already preparing for war. Engines roared in deep space. Soldiers gathered. The great invasion of Earth had begun, and only one man knew the horror waiting for them. The great halls of the Galactic War Council were empty now, but General Kareth did not sleep. He walked through the long metallic corridors of the capital ship Eternal Dawn, his mind heavy with memories. Outside the viewport, stars stretched like silver fire, yet none of them brought peace. He had seen too much. He had been to Earth once, not as a conqueror, but as a curious observer. That mission had changed him forever. The Empire had ordered him to study humanity, to learn their weaknesses. Instead, he found something terrifying: strength born from destruction. Now, as the Empire prepared for war, Kareth stood alone in the observation chamber. A small data sphere floated before him, glowing faint blue. Inside it, he had stored everything: the images, the history, the stories of Earth's forgotten wars. He whispered to himself, "They think they can crush humans, but they don't know what humans already survived." The next morning, the Emperor summoned him again. The council was waiting. The tension was sharp as a blade. "General Kareth," the Emperor said, his voice cold, "you made bold claims yesterday. You frightened my generals. Show us this so-called truth about Earth." Kareth nodded. "Then see for yourself." He placed the sphere in the center of the table. The room darkened and a projection filled the air. First came old footage: shaking cameras, roaring fires, cities falling under bombs. Alien generals leaned forward, eyes wide. The Emperor frowned. Kareth spoke quietly. "These are called world wars. This was Earth, thousands of years before they reached the stars. Humans destroyed themselves not once, but many times. They turned their planet into a graveyard and still continued." The hologram shifted. Mushroom clouds rising, oceans boiling, soldiers marching through black snow. A city burned under the light of nuclear fire. "They call this one the nuclear age," Kareth said. "The humans made weapons that could erase all life. But after every fall, they rebuilt stronger. They learned. They adapted." One alien general whispered. "They wiped out their own kind." "And survived?" "Yes," Kareth replied. "And each time they came back more determined. They learned to fight in deserts, ice, jungles, even the void of space. They never surrendered. Not to others, not to themselves." He switched the image again. Now it showed modern soldiers, armored humans with steel eyes walking through smoke. Machines, tanks, aircraft, weapons beyond reason. "After their final great war," Kareth continued, "they built a united world government. They turned their violence into technology. They sent ships to the stars. When I landed there, I saw cities built on craters. I saw children playing above battlefields where millions died. They remember, but they are not afraid." The Emperor leaned back, silent. Kareth stepped closer. "You see savages. I see survivors who learned that peace is just a pause between wars. If we fight them, they will not surrender. They will not stop. They will burn their own worlds before letting us win." One younger general slammed his hand on the table. "Lies, they are humans, not gods." Kareth turned to him, eyes burning faint gold. "Then you tell me, General, how does a species destroy itself, rebuild, and still reach the stars?" "No gods, no miracles. Only willpower. That is what makes them dangerous." The council fell silent again. No one laughed this time. The Emperor finally spoke, his tone colder than space. "Even if what you say is true, they are only one world. The Empire has thousands. We will crush them before they can react." Kareth shook his head. "You underestimate them because you measure them by numbers. But their wars were not fought for land or power. They fought because they refused to die." He paused, his voice dropping lower. "I have seen their monuments. Towers made of stone, built for their fallen. Every name carved, every story remembered. They carry their dead with pride, not sorrow. They will fight us not for victory, but for memory." A heavy silence filled the room. Even the Emperor looked uncertain now. Kareth pressed a button and the hologram faded. "They have a saying," he said quietly. "If you want peace, prepare for war." And they have prepared for a long time. He turned to leave, but stopped at the door. "I tried to warn you. Once they remember who they are, no force in the galaxy can stop them." He walked away, his cloak dragging softly against the golden floor. Behind him, the Emperor stared at the dark screen where Earth's flames had burned moments ago. Far beyond the stars, human fleets drifted silently, watching, waiting. The forgotten planet was no longer asleep. The Emperor's throne room shimmered with gold and fury. The holograms of human wars had shaken the council, but pride was stronger than fear. The Empire had ruled for 10,000 years. No single species had ever challenged them. Yet now a strange silence lingered. The Emperor's eyes glowed red in the dim light. "We are not afraid of ghosts," he said. "The humans are a single world. They have no empire, no colonies near our borders. We will crush them before they can react. Around the circular table, the generals nodded quickly, though many looked uneasy. No one wanted to appear weak. No one wanted to agree with Kareth. General Kareth stood at the far end, his arms crossed behind his back. His tone was calm, but his words carried weight. Your Majesty, arrogance has destroyed empires before, even greater than ours. Humans don't fight wars to win, they fight to survive. There is a difference, the Emperor's voice rose. Enough, he thundered. You speak of them as if they are gods. They are not. They bleed as we bleed. Kareth didn't move. Yes, he said softly, but they don't stop bleeding. They fight until nothing remains, and then they rise again. The council erupted. One general shouted, "He insults the Empire!" Another banged his fist on the table. "He's protecting humans." Kareth turned his head slowly toward them. "I am protecting you," he said. "You think they are like any other world we've conquered? They are not. Their peace is built on the bones of their own dead." The Emperor leaned forward. "And yet we rule the stars," he said coldly. "What can one dying species do against our fleets?" Kareth stared into the Emperor's eyes. "You will see. They will show you what a dying species can do when cornered." The chamber fell silent again. Then the Emperor smiled, a thin, cruel smile. "You will lead the first strike, General Kareth. Since you admire them so much, you may show us their strength firsthand." Murmurs spread across the hall. Kareth's jaw tightened. "You want me to start the war?" The Emperor nodded slowly. "You'll lead the invasion of the human border colonies. Burn their defenses. Bring me proof that your fear is misplaced." Kareth bowed his head. "And if I'm right?" The Emperor's smile faded. "Then may the stars have mercy on us." Hours later, Kareth stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Obsidian Dawn. His crew moved quietly, afraid to speak. Outside, the void stretched endlessly, dotted with stars and distant suns. His second officer, a young alien named Solon, approached carefully. "General, are we truly attacking them?" Kareth's gaze stayed fixed on the dark horizon. "The Emperor has spoken." "But sir," Solon whispered, "you've seen what they can do." Kareth nodded. "That's why I gave my will to the archives, in case we don't return." He turned to the window, watching the black of space shimmer as the fleet prepared to jump. "Solon," he said quietly, "when I was on Earth, I saw their museums, filled with weapons older than our empire. They kept them not for pride, but for warning. Every bullet, every bomb, every story, they remember." Solon swallowed hard. "Then why attack them, sir?" Kareth's voice darkened. "Because we are blind. The Empire is built on power, not wisdom, and power always thinks it cannot lose." A distant voice echoed through the intercom. "Fleet ready for warp, General." Kareth closed his eyes. "Begin jump sequence." The stars stretched into lines. The fleet roared into the void. Back in the Emperor's palace, the council watched their fleet vanish into hyperspace. The Emperor turned to his advisor. "Prepare the news broadcasts," he ordered. "By tomorrow, the galaxy will know that the human rebellion is over." The advisor hesitated. "Your Majesty, what if General Kareth is right?" The Emperor stood slowly, his shadow falling across the shining floor. "Then," he said coldly, "we'll make sure no one lives to tell the story." Far away, in a quiet sector near the edge of human space, the stars began to flicker. Dozens of human listening posts caught the first signals of the approaching fleet. One operator looked at the radar and froze. "Sir, they're coming." The human admiral on duty leaned forward, calm but unshaken. "Good," he said. "Let them come." He turned toward the dark window where the Earth's flag floated in the reflection. "They wanted to see what we learned from our wars," he whispered. "They're about to find out." The stars above the human frontier burned cold and quiet. The vast blackness of space was peaceful, too peaceful. On the edge of that silence, the Imperial fleet appeared. Thousands of warships shimmered into reality, forming a wall of steel and fire, their weapons charged, their banners of gold and crimson glowing against the void. General Kareth stood on the command deck of the Obsidian Dawn, staring at the blue dot ahead, a small human colony named Erebos IV. From orbit, it looked harmless, covered in oceans and thin clouds. To the Empire, it was a perfect first strike. "Fleet ready, General," reported Solon, his voice tight with fear. Kareth didn't answer. His mind was elsewhere, remembering the faces he saw on Earth years ago, the soldiers who smiled in mud, The children who played among ruins. The quiet courage that never died. He whispered to himself, they always fight back. Always. Across space, on a human command station orbiting Mars, alarms screamed. Officers ran between glowing screens as red lights flashed. Admiral Rhodes, an old man with sharp eyes and a calm tone, stood in the center of the chaos. Confirm the readings, he ordered. A young officer replied, Sir, multiple warp signatures. Massive fleet, unknown origin. Rhodes didn't blink. It's them, he said. The Empire finally decided. Another officer asked, Orders, sir? Rhodes looked out at the stars and smiled faintly. Prepare the transmission. No weapons, no threats, just a message. Back aboard the Obsidian Dawn, sensors flared. A soft signal touched the fleet's network. Not a weapon, not a virus, but a simple broadcast. The Emperor's admirals tried to block it, but it echoed across every ship, every screen, every mind. The hologram shimmered to life in Kareth's command room. A human appeared. Admiral Rhodes, dressed in a dark uniform with the Earth emblem glowing on his chest. His eyes were calm, steady, ancient. Leaders of the Galactic Empire, he began. This is Admiral Elias Rhodes of the Terran Defense Command. We know why you've come. The bridge fell silent. Even the hum of the engines seemed to fade. Rhodes continued. You look at our history and see chaos. You see wars, destruction, and pain. You call us violent, unpredictable, dangerous. He leaned forward. You're right. The alien crew stared in shock. Kareth's eyes narrowed. But understand this, Rhodes said softly. Every world that tried to destroy us taught us something. Every war carved lessons into our bones. We don't forget. We don't forgive easily, we endure, and we rebuild, faster than anyone believes. He paused, letting his words sink into the silence. If you seek war, Rhodes continued, you'll find it. But if you think this will be easy, remember, we've already fought extinction. You can't frighten those who learn to live through their own apocalypse. The human leaned closer to the camera, voice low and steady. This is not a threat. This is a warning. Do not test what your kind cannot survive. The transmission ended. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, across the Imperial channels, laughter broke the silence. The Emperor's admirals mocked the message. Empty words. Primitive courage. They think fear will save them. But Kareth didn't laugh. His face was stone. He's not lying, he said. That man has seen the end of worlds. The Emperor's fleet commander appeared on the holoscreen. General Kareth, begin the assault. Kareth hesitated. My Emperor, I recommend we wait. Do not question my command. The Emperor thundered. Show them the power of the Empire. Kareth's heart sank. All ships, he said softly. Prepare to fire. Solon turned toward him. Sir? Do it, Kareth whispered, his voice hollow. Thousands of ships lit up, their cannons aimed at the quiet world below. A moment later, space exploded in light. But then something happened no one expected. The blast vanished, swallowed by invisible ripples. The energy waves dissolved before reaching the planet. Systems failed. Engines flickered. Weapons froze. A blinding pulse spread from Arivos 4 like a heartbeat. Sir, our targeting systems are offline, cried Solon. Gravity readings. Impossible. On the main screen, the clouds over the planet parted. Massive black shapes rose from the surface. Human ships, hundreds of them, emerging in perfect silence. Their designs were strange, sleek, cold, almost ancient. Kareth stared in awe. They were waiting for us. The lead human ship transmitted again. No sound this time, just a single line of text. You were warned. Across the galaxy, the Emperor's command room erupted in chaos as data streams turned red. What happened? He shouted. His advisor trembled. They disabled the entire fleet without firing a shot. The Emperor froze, realizing the truth too late. Back on the Obsidian Dawn, Kareth stood silently, staring at the planet. His crew looked at him for orders. He said quietly, this was never a war. It was a lesson. Outside the window, human ships floated in the dark, still watching, merciful. The void was silent. Too silent. The once proud fleet of the Galactic Empire now drifted helplessly above the human colony of Arivos 4. Fire control was dead, shields flickered, and the ship's massive engines floated cold. The crews whispered in confusion, afraid even to breathe. General Kareth stood on the command bridge of the Obsidian Dawn, his eyes locked on the sight below. a fleet of human warships rising from the planet's atmosphere. They moved like shadows, quiet and steady, their black hulls reflecting no light. Every alien officer felt it, that unnatural stillness before something terrible. "Status report," Kareth said quietly. Solin's voice shook. "Sir, all weapons are disabled. Communications scrambled. Even life support readings are being adjusted remotely." "Remotely?" Kareth repeated. "Yes, sir. By them." The bridge went silent again. Kareth looked out the window. The human ships were not attacking. They were watching, waiting. One ship, and larger than the rest, broke formation. Its surface shimmered with lines of pale blue light, and symbols glowed across its hull like ancient runes. Then a voice filled every Imperial ship at once, calm and echoing, not through speakers but through thought itself. "We asked for peace. You chose war. Now you will understand why your kind never found Earth first." The voice vanished. Suddenly, every Imperial sensor displayed images, not from their own cameras but from human archives. Footage of deserts turned to glass, oceans boiling, cities erased by light. Then quieter scenes, rebuilding, farming, teaching children under ruined skies. "They're showing us their past," Solin whispered. Kareth nodded slowly. "No, they're warning." On the other side of the galaxy, inside the Emperor's golden palace, chaos reigned. Dozens of screens filled the council chamber. Each one showed the same image: the human fleet surrounding their immobilized armada. The Emperor's fists slammed against the control table. "Fire something! Anything!" His admiral shook his head, trembling. "Your Majesty, they've shut down our entire system grid. Even our AI is silent." "Then contact Kareth. Tell him to destroy them." "We can't, sire. They control every channel." The Emperor's voice dropped into a growl. "Then they've declared war on the Empire." The council members exchanged fearful glances. One whispered, "Or perhaps they've already won it." Back aboard the Obsidian Dawn, the lights dimmed. A single transmission appeared, a live message from the humans. A hologram of Admiral Rhodes stood before them again, his image calm and steady. "You invaded our space," he said. "You fired first, but we will not destroy you. Humanity has learned that some lessons must be shown, not fought." He gestured, and every Imperial ship's sensors turned outward. The surrounding stars shifted. The alien crews gasped. The stars themselves were moving. "What is that?" Solin cried. "Their fleet," Kareth said softly. Billions of lights glowed in the darkness, human ships stretching from horizon to horizon. From hidden bases, moons, and stations, the veil lifted. The Empire had thought humanity was limited to a few systems. Now they saw the truth. Humanity had surrounded half the galaxy without being noticed. The Emperor watched in disbelief from his throne. "Impossible." Kareth spoke into the quiet bridge. They were never expanding for conquest. They were preparing for survival. The hologram of Admiral Rhodes looked directly at Kareth. "We've studied your kind too, General. We know your honor. Leave now and live. But tell your Emperor, the wars of Earth never truly ended. We only learned how to fight without fighting." The hologram faded. "General," Solin said, voice trembling. "Orders?" Kareth took a long breath. "Signal the fleet. We are retreating." "Retreat? But the Emperor sent us to die. I'll not obey a fool's pride." Kareth turned to the crew. "Set jump coordinates to Imperial space, and record what we've seen here. The galaxy must know." Engines hummed back to life, so allowed by the humans. As the Imperial fleet turned away, a single human message appeared across their sensors. "War is not our desire, but survival is our nature." When the fleet returned to the Imperial capital, it was greeted not with celebration, but silence. The Emperor met Kareth in the Great Hall, surrounded by guards. "You retreated," the Emperor hissed. "I survived," Kareth replied. "So did the Empire." The Emperor's eyes blazed. "You brought shame to us." Kareth stepped closer. "No, Majesty. I brought you truth. You fought shadows. I saw the fire behind them." The Emperor trembled with rage, but no words came. He knew the truth. His empire was powerful, but not invincible. Not anymore. Later, alone on his balcony, Kareth watched the night sky. For the first time, he felt no pride in the Empire's shining banners. Only awe for the small blue world that had once burned itself to ashes and still found the strength to rise. He whispered softly, "They call it peace, but I think it's something greater. It's memory. Far away, deep in human space, a single transmission traveled through the void. A simple message in ancient human code. The war that never began has already been won. The throne hall of the Galactic Empire stood cold and silent. The golden banners that once symbolized power now hung like ghosts, dull under the dim light. Word of the failed invasion had spread across the stars. Worlds whispered of the fleet that went to fight humanity, and never fired a single shot. The Emperor sat on his throne, his crown casting a faint reflection on the marble floor. His eyes were heavy with rage and disbelief. Before him, escorted by guards, walked General Kareth. His armor was scarred, his expression calm. When Kareth reached the center of the hall, the Emperor rose. "You dare to return?" he said. His voice trembled between anger and fear. Kareth stood straight. "You sent me to destroy them. Instead, I saw what they truly are. Traitor," shouted one of the council members. "He speaks for the humans." Kareth turned toward the council circle. "No, I speak for survival." The Emperor's voice dropped to a cold whisper. "Tell me, General, what did you see out there?" Kareth's gaze hardened. "I saw a species that learned to conquer death itself. I saw a fleet hidden in silence, built not for pride but for protection. I saw power restrained by mercy. Humanity could have destroyed us. Instead, they let us go." The Emperor clenched his fists. "Mercy? You call their arrogance mercy? They didn't destroy us because they didn't need to." Kareth said quietly, "To them we are not enemies." "We are warnings." When the council chamber fell quiet. The golden light flickered and the echoes of distant machinery filled the silence. Kareth stepped forward. "For centuries the Empire has believed that strength comes from fear and obedience. But humans—" He paused, his voice low and steady. "They learned that strength is born from pain. They carry the memory of every war, every loss, every mistake. It makes them unbreakable." A younger general spat. "You sound like you admire them." Kareth turned slowly. "I respect what they've become. You fear what you don't understand. They don't fight for glory or conquest. They fight to make sure no one else suffers what they once did." He reached into his armor and pulled out a small sphere. A data crystal. "I brought this from the battle." Their message. He activated it. The chamber darkened. A hologram filled the space. Admiral Rhodes once again, standing tall in his dark uniform. His voice echoed softly across the hall. "We did not rise from peace. We rose from fire. We will not attack you. But if you come again, you will see what we once did to ourselves, and why no one should make us do it again." The hologram ended. The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. The Emperor sat back slowly. For the first time, the fire in his eyes dimmed. "So, they refuse war yet threaten it. They hide behind fear." Kareth shook his head. "No, Majesty. They hide behind remembrance. They remember what happens when peace fails." The Emperor looked away, his voice barely a whisper. "Then what do you suggest, General?" Kareth walked closer, his footsteps echoing through the grand chamber. "We stop pretending we are gods. The Empire rules by power. Humanity rules by survival. They've mastered the one thing we never learned, restraint." He paused, his eyes meeting the Emperor's. "If we continue this path, our empire will die not by their hand, but by our own arrogance." The Emperor looked at him long and hard, his anger fading into quiet dread. "And what do they want from us?" "Nothing," Kareth said simply. "That's what terrifies me." He turned to leave, but the Emperor's voice stopped him. "Kareth, what did they call the war you saw? The one they said they already fought?" Kareth looked back, his expression unreadable. "They called it the end of all wars, but it wasn't an ending. It was a reminder." He bowed once. "Remember this, Emperor, they don't fight for victory. They fight so they never have to fight again." He walked out of the hall, leaving the Emperor staring at the fading light. Later, in the darkness of his quarters, Kareth stood by the viewport. The stars shone softly beyond the glass. Somewhere among them, humanity watched in silence, patient, prepared, unbroken. He whispered, "The galaxy thinks they fear humans, but fear isn't the right word." He closed his eyes. "They respect them. Even the stars do." Far across the void on Earth, Admiral Rhodes stood at his own window watching the same stars. His officers approached quietly. "Do you think they understood the message, sir?" one asked. Rhodes smiled faintly. "Oh, they understood," he said. "They always do. That's why there will never be a war." Outside, the fleets of Earth drifted quietly. black silhouettes among the stars, watching, waiting, protecting the fragile peace built on memory and fear.